Formula One isn't won on the track. Not anymore. The real lap times are decided behind keycards and non-disclosure agreements in windowless design offices across Europe. What you are looking at right now is one of the most calculated structural moves in modern motorsport history. Toyota Gazoo Racing's technical deal with Haas, and how it systematically drained high-value engineering firepower right out of Aston Martin's Silverstone base. 15 seconds. That's all it takes to see the exact blueprint here. Toyota wanted a seamless return to F1 engineering, without blowing $500 million or carrying constructor liability. Haas needed manufacturing output and aero talent to escape the bottom of the midfield. Aston Martin had stacked top-heavy talent, leaving their mid-level engineering staff completely vulnerable to recruitment. Toyota didn't buy a grid slot. They exploited an organizational gap, absorbed ground effect knowledge, and gave Haas immediate technical leverage. To understand why this worked, you have to look at the money. Under the cost cap rules, teams operate under strict spending ceilings. Lawrence Stroll's strategy at Aston Martin was simple: massive capital expenditure, build a brand new facility at Silverstone, build a proprietary wind tunnel, secure a Honda Works engine deal, sign massive, high-profile technical names like Adrian Newey and Enrico Cardiel. On paper, it looks like a blueprint for absolute dominance. In reality, a top-heavy structure creates immediate operational pressure points. When you pay massive salaries at the top tier, you force tighter budget management everywhere else. Mid-level engineering, CFD analysis, aerodynamic development, they all take a hit. Plus, when senior staff enter an organization to completely overhaul technical philosophies, existing development pipelines hit bottlenecks. Directional shifts cause friction. Work gets scrapped. Ideas get binned. Engineers get frustrated. Toyota saw this exact dynamic. Remember, Toyota walked away from F1 as a full constructor in 2009 after spending billions with almost nothing to show for it. They had zero interest in repeating that direct entry model. They didn't need to own a team to gain F1 capabilities. They needed access to active technical pipelines, modern ground effect aero data, and skilled personnel, all without triggering traditional financial burdens or taking on constructor liabilities. Haas was the perfect vehicle. Operating as the leanest outfit on the grid, Haas relied heavily on external partnerships, sourcing non-listed parts from Ferrari and outsourcing chassis production to Dallara in Italy. By positioning themselves alongside Haas, Toyota created an immediate entry point into active F1 development. Now, let's talk about the mechanics of the heist itself. Navigating gardening leave. Usually, when a team principal tries to poach a senior engineer, the current employer puts that employee on paid administrative leave for 6 to 12 months. It stops current aero data, CAD models, and floor concepts from walking straight into a rival's design office. Toyota's arrangement with Haas completely bypassed that friction because Toyota Gazoo Racing operates as an external technical and manufacturing partner. When engineers transition into roles tied to Toyota's Cologne operations or joint projects with Haas, the move operates under entirely different organizational parameters than a standard constructor-to-constructor transfer. Mid-level engineers at Aston Martin were dealing with specific structural frustrations. They were trapped in continuous restructuring cycles, triggered by high-profile management changes, facing severe development bottlenecks, where mid-level CFD iterations were delayed or discarded, and hitting strict salary caps imposed on non-executive technical staff just to balance top-tier payrolls. Toyota handed them a direct escape hatch. They offered direct access to advanced manufacturing resources, long-term stability, inside Toyota's global motorsport ecosystem, and the rare chance to build a technical pipeline from the ground up at Haas. No complex corporate politics. Just focused technical roles with direct implementation paths straight onto the race car. Why couldn't Aston Martin simply outbid Toyota to keep them? Again, the cost cap. The financial regulations make every dollar spent on performance a zero-sum trade-off. High-profile executive acquisitions take up massive chunks of allowable expenditure. When you allocate that much capital to secure marquee names, the budget for mid-level aerodynamicists and structural stress analysts shrinks fast. Toyota, functioning as an external industrial partner, operates under vastly different resource metrics across its global divisions. They can offer competitive compensation, cross-functional roles across programs like WEC, and career longevity that a single F1 team bound by strict cap limits simply cannot match. It created a massive economic displacement effect. First, you get the top-heavy trap, where Aston Martin concentrated capital at the top and created friction down the hierarchy. Then came the resource vacuum, allowing Toyota to capitalize on mid-level workforce movement and acquire the engineers who execute day-to-day CAD work, wind tunnel runs, and telemetry correlation. Finally, it triggered a development lag. When mid-level personnel leave, translating high-level aero concepts into physical track components slows to a crawl, and upgrade packages get delayed. By securing mid-level operational talent, Toyota strengthened Haas's technical foundation, while silently disrupting the development continuity of a direct rival. To appreciate the scale of this shift, look at how Haas used to operate. Since 2016, Haas ran an outsourced model by buying every permitted component from Ferrari, outsourcing chassis construction to Dallara in Italy, and maintaining a minimal internal staff. It kept overhead low, but it set a hard ceiling on development. They suffered from total dependency on supplier schedules, severe resource bottlenecks without dedicated manufacturing for rapid iteration floor updates, and correlation challenges where aligning wind tunnel data with track performance required external facility access that limited quick troubleshooting. The Toyota partnership flips that model on its head. Toyota's Cologne facility, originally built for their 2000s F1 program and continuously upgraded for World Endurance Championship campaigns, houses world-class wind tunnel infrastructure, simulator setups, and manufacturing capabilities. Pairing former Aston Martin technical personnel with Toyota's manufacturing capacity gives Haas capabilities they could never afford on their own. They now get in-house prototype testing for rapid update turnarounds, enhanced data processing through direct integration of experienced ground effect aero engineers, and significantly reduced operational bottlenecks with zero reliance on single-source external production schedules. This isn't a sticker on a car, it isn't a marketing deal, it is a functional operational upgrade that elevates Haas from a buyer of external parts to a team backed by industrial manufacturing power. Looking at the broader landscape, this move reflects a fundamental shift in corporate motorsport strategy. In previous decades, a major manufacturer wanting F1 exposure had to buy a team, invest hundreds of millions in infrastructure, and risk massive public embarrassments if performance lagged. Toyota proved there's a leaner way. You capitalize on existing regulatory frameworks, partner with an established team needing technical scale, recruit skilled personnel seeking stable environments, and build F1 competency without taking on sole financial ownership. Aston Martin built incredible facilities at Silverstone, but modern Formula One requires operational efficiency at every single level of the workforce. When mid-level talent moves, technical momentum moves with them. Toyota identified an operational vulnerability, executed a clean personnel transition, and repositioned Haas in the midfield hierarchy. To truly understand how deep this strategic maneuver runs, you have to look at the human cost inside a modern Formula One design office. When a team spends years stacking talent at the top, the day-to-day work environment for the rank-and-file engineers degrades almost immediately. These are the people spending 80 hours a week running computational fluid dynamics simulations, analyzing front-wing vortex structures, and trying to get floor edges to seal against the tarmac at 300 kilometers an hour. When big-name directors enter the building, they bring their own design philosophies, their own CAD preferences, and their own trusted lieutenants. That means months of mid-level work gets wiped overnight. An aerodynamicist who spent 4 months perfecting an underbody side pod channel suddenly finds their project canceled because a new technical director prefers a different downwash concept. That creates immense fatigue. In a pre-cost cap world, teams like Aston Martin could simply throw higher salaries at those mid-level engineers to keep them happy and offset the frustration. But under the current financial regulations, that safety net is gone. Every extra $100,000 given to keep a mid-level aerodynamicist happy is $100,000 taken away from composite manufacturing, spare chassis production, or wind tunnel hours. This is precisely where Toyota's structure becomes a weapon. Because Toyota isn't subject to the F1 constructor cap in the same way an entrant is, they can offer engineers roles that span multiple high-level motorsport disciplines. An engineer moving under the Toyota umbrella isn't just taking a job at Haas, they are joining Toyota Gazoo Racing. They get access to World Endurance Championship programs, hypercar development, hydrogen propulsion research, and cutting-edge simulation software across multiple global facilities. If things get chaotic at the F1 level, their career isn't tied to the survival or short-term decisions of a single team principal. They have true corporate mobility and job security in an industry notorious for rapid turnover. For an engineer who just spent 2 years dealing with management shifts at Silverstone, that kind of stability is worth far more than a marginal pay bump. From a pure engineering perspective, what Haas gains from this talent shift is immediate correlation knowledge. Modern ground effect F1 cars are notoriously sensitive to correlation issues. That means what you see in the virtual CFD environment and what you measure in the wind tunnel often fails to match what the car actually does on the physical circuit. Ground effect floors operate in fractions of a millimeter. If the floor flexes slightly too much over a curb, the entire aerodynamic structure collapses, causing violent porpoising or sudden rear-end snap. Aston Martin spent immense resources over the past 3 seasons studying floor correlation, experiencing both breakthroughs and massive setbacks. The mid-level aerodynamicists who worked through those exact problems carry that trial and error experience in their heads. When Toyota recruits those individuals and places them into the Haas-Toyota technical pipeline, Haas doesn't have to spend 2 years making those same mistakes. They bypass the learning curve. They get immediate, real-world experience on how to manage floor airflow, how to control tire wake around the diffuser, and how to set up mechanical suspension geometries to keep the platform stable. At the same time, look at what this does to Aston Martin's operational tempo. When you lose the engineers who handle the granular, day-to-day execution, your development pipeline freezes. Marquee technical leads can draw big-picture aerodynamic concepts on a drafting board, but they don't draw every single bracket, carbon layup, or surface mesh themselves. They rely on an army of precise, hyper-specialized engineers to turn broad concepts into physical CAD files ready for the autoclave. When those mid-level personnel disappear, the senior leaders are forced to spend time training new recruits, establishing new workflow protocols, and double-checking basic correlation work. The entire machine slows down. Upgrades that were scheduled for the start of the European season get pushed back to midsummer. Minor floor revisions take 6 weeks instead of 3. In a sport where 0.2 of a second separates 5th place on the grid from 15th, a 4-week delay in update delivery can ruin an entire championship campaign. What makes Toyota's strategy so brilliant is that it exposes a massive loophole in how modern F1 partnerships are regulated. For years, rival teams have complained about close relationships between top-tier teams and customer outfits, like Ferrari and Haas, or Red Bull and RB. The FIA created strict rules defining listed parts, non-listed parts, and shared facility time to keep those alliances fair. However, those regulations were designed assuming that third-party partners were either chassis builders, like Dallara, or engine suppliers, like Honda and Renault. The rules never fully anticipated a massive, multi-billion-dollar global automotive manufacturer stepping in as an external technical contractor, specifically to build out manufacturing, simulation, and staffing infrastructure for a customer team without actually owning the entry slot. Toyota isn't submitting a new team application. They aren't paying the $200 million anti-dilution fee required for new entrants. They aren't asking the FIA for extra wind tunnel time, or trying to bypass listed parts rules directly. They are simply acting as an engineering services provider and industrial partner. They provide world-class facilities in Cologne, hire high-caliber technical talent, and feed high-volume manufacturing output back to Haas. It gives Haas the structural power of a works team with the agile, low-overhead budget of a privateer. Rival team principals are watching this with extreme concern. If Toyota's model proves successful and Haas starts consistently out-developing established midfield constructors, it creates a precedent that changes F1 ownership forever. Why would a corporate giant spend $500 million buying a struggling constructor, building expensive headquarters, and paying massive entry fees when they can simply find a lean, willing partner like Haas, supply them with personnel and manufacturing, and reap all the technical and branding benefits for a fraction of the price? If this strategy pays off on track, expect immediate political warfare behind closed doors. Team principals from rival midfield teams will almost certainly begin lobbying the FIA to clamp down on third-party manufacturing alliances, personnel transfers through non-constructor entities, and shared technical facilities. They will argue that these arrangements bypass the spirit of the cost cap and give partner teams an unfair resource advantage. Now the real question begins. How will rival teams respond as we approach the next major regulatory reset? Will organizations push the FIA for stricter definitions around third-party manufacturing alliances? Or will other automotive giants copy Toyota's lean integration